Welcome to the LAS monthly review for the sky for September. Details will be on the website as well. There'll be extra notes on the website published later. So this is the whole sky view for the September sky. You can see that we're now heading towards autumn. Summer triangle, which is now prominent overhead. Deneb, Vega, and Altair forming the triangle. The Milky Way is stretching from the south overhead to the north, which is obviously spectacular this time of the year in moonless conditions in a dark site. We also have two bright planets, Jupiter and Saturn, in the south, and we now have Mars joining in as well in the east. Mars is particularly bright at the moment as it's heading towards opposition next month. So we have also in the south a rare chance to see the star Fomalhaut here in the southern fish, Pisces Australis. This pops over our horizon for a very short time in the autumn, so do have a look for that one. It's quite rare to see that. In the west, we're now losing some of the summer sky. We've actually got Arcturus, which is quite low down in the west, and now that's quite a bright star, orange in colour, can't miss it. To find Arcturus, you follow the curve of the handle of the plough down towards this. Arcturus is a bright orange star here. Okay. Pointers obviously point to the North Pole star here. And if we extend the other way, we come to another bright star, Capella, which is in Auriga. We also have a constellation of Perseus here, which is really a signpost constellation for the autumn sky. And as we approach mid-September, it's the first time we start to see the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades M45, by late evening. So a true sign that autumn is indeed just round the corner. So looking south at about 10 o'clock mid-month, we can see that the constellation of Sagittarius is now really heading towards the horizon. Last chance to see some of the wonders of the Milky Way down this area here, with Scutum star cloud and some of the nice Messier objects here. It's getting quite low down pretty early on in the evening by the end of the month, so do have a look for it early in the month. We also have a constellation of Pegasus, which is another signpost constellation. The square of Pegasus is quite a large square here, and it points to some useful things. So it points down this way to this area, which is the end of Aquarius. And this is where we find the planet Neptune. You can find Neptune fairly easily with binoculars. And you can also use this asterism called the circlet, which is part of Pisces, as a useful signpost. So if also in the south, high in the south, we have constellation of Hercules, another asterism here, the keystone. This is like a keystone of a bridge. That's what it's called, the keystone here. You've got M13, which is probably one of the best globular clusters in the sky, and its rival M92 is not too far away. There's something else which we can look at in the night sky, low in the south at this time of the year. It's the Helix Nebula. It's a planetary nebula, but it's actually quite big in apparent size. It's about half the size of the moon, so it's really low surface brightness feature. And you really need to try and spot that one early on in the month. Move into the west, as I say, we're now losing some of the constellations which we've had for the summer months. And so really we're looking ahead towards the end of summer into autumn. So these really are the last chances to see some of these objects before next year, effectively. One star you can pick up, which is double star, which is double star Izar, Epsilon Boötes. You can see that with a 60mm refractor, pushing it at about times 120 times magnification. It's quite a nice double star. If we move around to the north, we can now see Ursa Major, low in the north aspect. You can see this is the handle and this is the plough asterism. But now you can start to see the real nature of Ursa Major. If you imagine this really is the bear, the great bear, the snout is over here, the tail is up here, and these are the forepaws and the hindpaws. And you can really start to see how that might look more like an animal with its, it's got legs on it, as it were. And it's really a very large constellation indeed. In a dark sky, you'll be surprised how striking that can be. Okay, so Cassiopeia is the other constellation, which is a signpost opposite the plough, the W, which looks more like a 3 or whatever this time of the year, at this time of evening. And that's another signpost which points towards Perseus down here, double cluster, very nice in a pair of binoculars or telescope. And using Cassiopeia the other way, we come to the Andromeda Galaxy over here, which is becoming more easily seen. It's quite high up in the sky now, and it's very low surface brightness. It's actually 6 times the diameter of the moon to look at, so binoculars show it quite well. Telescopes only show the real center of the galaxy. If we look into the east, this is what's coming up in the next few months, really, in our autumn sky. So now we have the pie-shaped constellation of Perseus here, 2 legs coming down here, and a crosspiece. As I say, very rich area of the sky, lots of Milky Way running through here. We have famous Campbell's Cascade feature here, which is a line of stars which people may like to look at with binoculars. We have the Murphak Association, which is a group of stars here, which is really an open cluster. It's actually part of that, associated with this bright star here, Murphak. Imagers might like to have a go at trying to get the California Nebula, which is quite a prominent deep sky object for CCD imaging or camera imaging. Uranus is actually visible. It's actually in the border of Aries and Pisces. It's actually in Aries at the moment. If you find the Pleiades, you find these 2 stars here, which form Aries. Drop down about 3 binocular fields of view, you'll see something quite bright. It's about 7 or 5.6 magnitude, rather. So it's really quite a prominent coloration to it as well, and that's the planet Uranus. Nearby is obviously brilliant Mars, which is really starting to become really prominent in the eastern sky. You'll find more details on each of these, Mars, Uranus, and Neptune, on the newsletters provided at the bottom of the screen. So the moon this month is new moon's on the 17th, first quarter is 24th, the full moon, which is the corn moon, is on September the 2nd, and last quarter is on the 10th. So if you want to see the moon illusion, which is really an optical illusion, is watch the moon rising on around about the 2nd of the month, and put yourself in line of sight with a building or a tree or some feature, and your brain will do the rest. It becomes an optical illusion. It does appear to be rather big. It actually doesn't change its size, obviously, but it actually appears bigger than it should do to the eye. We also have a number of interesting objects for the enthusiast this month. Stephan's Quintet is really the most challenging thing I think an amateur can look at. It's 5 galaxies in a group, eye-wateringly down to 13th magnitude. You can see it in a darkened sky, but it really is a large telescope challenge. Something a bit more easy to spot is possibly the famous Snowball Nebula, which is NGC 76662, which is a planetary nebula. Okay, so now if we go into the features of the month. Featured constellations this month are Perseus, Andromeda, Auriga, and Cassiopeia. What I've shown here is deep sky objects down to a limiting magnitude of about 10. So it's really within binocular range or a small telescope, but it really is pushing that to its magnitude. I've added the NGC numbers, as you can see, and also the Messier numbers. So this is quite a useful reference chart for you to refer back to. There's some low surface brightness features here. We have M33, which is a really difficult one to spot in the town due to light pollution or whatever, but in a darkened sky it's obvious, and we're not going to show it quite well. M34 is another cluster here, which is often overlooked sometimes, but it's quite a nice cluster to have a look at. We have a double star here, which is Almach, which is Gamma Andromedae, a rival to Albario. A very nice cluster, very nice star to look at. Coming up a bit later in the month, and after 10 o'clock, we have Auriga with its famous clusters of M36, 37, and 38 in here. Quite nice clusters. And then obviously we have later on, around about midnight, we'll have Taurus rising. So we have obviously the Hyades, the red star Aldebaran, and another low surface feature object to look at is M1, the Crab Nebula. The crab appears to be a rather grey smudge in a telescope optically, but the actual shape of the claw, which is why it was called the Crab Nebula, Lord Ross named it the Crab Nebula, can be seen, I think, with a bit of imagination. If we look at the planets in the course of the next month, we see we have a real host of them. We have obviously Venus in the morning sky. If you're up early in the morning, you'll see that quite easily. Mercury is lost to us this month. It's really out of the way, and it's really not well placed for the northern observers at the moment. Mars is coming into view in the evening sky, and that really dominates the scene for the next few months. Jupiter obviously is really easily visible after sunset, and it's really, look at it now before it gets too late in the month, because it is getting lower and lower into the twilight zone. Saturn is to the east of that, so we have a little bit longer to watch for that. That's quite good at the moment. Again, it's low in the south and southwest. Neptune, as I said, is in Aquarius, and is now visible from early evening onwards. And likewise, Uranus is a bit later on in the evening, but it is an early evening object now. So we have all the major planets available to us, I think, in the evening sky, with the exception of Venus, which is in the morning sky. If you're looking at Saturn, obviously there's quite a few features to look at. Now we've moved away from opposition, you might like to start to think about looking at the rings and actually looking for gaps down the side of the planet. This is where shadows are cast by the sun onto the rings, and you actually see the shadow of the globe actually cast onto the ring system itself. You see a small gap at one side of the globe. To spot that one's quite easily. Some of the other features like Encke and Cassini are a bit more difficult to spot, but you can actually see them with a moderate telescope. One interesting thing that's coming up this month, which is another Clair Obscur event. This is known as the Eyes of Clavius. Clavius is this crater here, which is partly lit at this time, 25th of September at 2200 hours BST. So this part is not lit because it's actually where the sunrise on the moon is occurring. And there's a couple of craters within Clavius here, which actually have prominent rims on them, and they become illuminated first. So effectively what you start to see is two eyes appearing just outside the terminator, where the the sunlight is catching the top of the crater's rim. So that's a bit of a novelty to look at. Easy one to spot, I would hope. So looking at the months ahead, there are quite a few things to look at. We have a number of shadow transits on Jupiter's moon Io, for example, on the 1st. It starts at 2156 and actually finishes in the early hours of September the 2nd, but by which time Jupiter's set. So actually you can start to see the beginning of it, but not the end, possibly. Moon illusion on the 2nd. And then for those of you who've not seen a lunar occultation, there is a 5.8 magnitude star, which has a natty title of ZC18, which is zodiacal catalogue number 18, and that will reappear on the dark limb of the moon at 22:43 BST. So if you're looking at the moon at that time, you might start to see this star pop out from the dark limb of the moon as the moon moves in front of it. We've done a shadow transit on the 4th, and again, that probably won't be visible. It's after it's, or close to when it sets, when it comes out, but it will be visible 2150. If you're looking at Saturn, you'll start to see Saturn's moon Titan fairly easily, and it reaches elongation on the 5th. So it's an easy one to spot with binoculars, actually, with a small telescope. If you're looking at the moon and Mars, they're quite close together in the early hours of September the 6th. In fact, it's an occultation from South America. It's not for us in the UK, it's just a close approach, as it were. But the two will get very close together on the morning of September the 6th. On September the 8th, the moon is positioned just south of the Pleiades, 7:45. And the next day, Mars reaches its stationary point. At the moment, if you're looking at Mars with binoculars or tracking it across its background stars, it's in retrograde after this date. So it's coming up towards the opposition on the 13th of October. Mars is actually moving backwards, effectively. It's moving east to west, as opposed to its normal west easterly movement. So look for that, out for that, actually, if you're spotting Mars against the background stars. Also, obviously, the moon is actually very close to Aldebaran. It does this several times during the next few months, but it's just a close approach, as it were. It's not an occultation or anything. Again, on the 10th, the moon is positioned in Taurus to the left of the Hyades cluster and Aldebaran. And then, obviously, September the 11th, we've now reached Neptune opposition. It is opposition. It makes a little bit of difference to brightness, but over the course of a few months, it's around about 7th magnitude anyway. So you'll find details on newsletter 254. Another satellite feature of this month on Jupiter is Ganymede's solar transit. Again, it crosses the central meridian about 2100 hours. So if you're looking at Jupiter at that time, have a look to see if you can see a small black dot crossing the center of the disk. Venus is located 2.5 degrees south of the Beehive cluster M44 in pre-dawn skies on the 13th. And then we have Saturn's moon Titan at elongation the other way to the west on the 13th. New moon favors the deep sky observers around about the 17th. So if you're doing any deep sky work, that's the best time of the month to have a look at things when the moon's out of the way. There's another shadow transit on the 17th. This time it's Io again. And if you're really interested in looking at a thin waxing crescent moon, then there is one visible 2.5% in size, visible for just a mere 54 minutes after sunset. But do remember to look after the sun's completely set. Now we've come into September. We have the autumnal equinox on the 22nd, and this really is the beginning of our observing season as autumn begins in the northern hemisphere. The moon is positioned close to the red star Antares, but is really low down on the 22nd of September. It's an evening twilight. The best time to see most crater details is on the moon is the 24th, around about first quarter. Do have a look at that. There's some interesting shadow transits, shadow details going on the Terminator at that time. And also on the 24th, we have a meeting hosted by Dave Eagle, presenting his account of the Apollo story. So more details will be posted on that later in the month. We have the September 25th clear obscure effect, the eyes of Clavius, at 10 o'clock in the evening, 2200 hours. And if you're really interested in lunar occultations, there's another one. This is Epsilon Capricorni, and that is on the 27th of September, again at about 22:12 BST. So it's not too bad. It's not too late to look at that. So that really rounds up the events for September, and all being well, we'll do it again next month. Thank you.